You wake to the low rumble of thunder. At least that's what your sleepy mind first insists it must be. Perhaps it's a spring storm rolling over the Sea of Marmara, the kind that sends gulls wheeling and shakes shutters in their frames. But then the thunder repeats, sharper, heavier, and it doesn't fade into the distance either. It grows. The cups on your shelf rattle. The dust in the rafters drifts down like grey snow. Someone is pounding at your door. Your neighbour, a wiry old man with eyes that dart like a sparrow's, bursts in without waiting for your answer. "It's begun," he gasps, leaning on the doorframe as if the words themselves weigh him down. "The Turks' cannons. By Christ, they're at the Theodosian walls already." Now you hear it clearly. Not thunder, not storms. The flat, stomach-turning concussion of gunpowder. The world's newest terror, harnessed by Sultan Mehmed II, 19 years old, ruthless, and ambitious enough to tear down a city older than Rome itself. You step outside. The street is alive with motion. Children cling to their mothers. Men carry buckets of sand and stone rushing toward the western gates. Priests hurry past, muttering prayers that sound more desperate than divine. Everyone has known this day was coming, but knowing and hearing it shake the bones of the city after all are two very different things. You glance back at your home, your little wooden nest tucked between neighbours, smelling faintly of olive oil and old timber. Comfortable, safe, ordinary. At least it was. Now it feels like a coffin waiting for the lid to be nailed shut. The choice before you isn't much of a choice at all. Stay here and wait for whatever doom seeps in through the walls, or go see with your own eyes what is happening. Survival won't come to those who cower behind locked doors. You take a breath, mutter a prayer, and step into the current of the crowd heading west. The road twists upward toward the Gate of Tiresias, one of the city's many portals piercing the mighty Theodosian walls. Those walls are legendary, 3 layers thick, defended for 1,000 years against Huns, Arabs, Bulgars, Rus. To the world beyond, Constantinople has always been the city that cannot fall. But of course, that was before cannons. As you approach, you hear them again. The Ottoman bombards roar, each shot a monstrous exhale of fire and iron. The ground trembles as if Poseidon himself were kicking at the earth from below. Men on the walls wince, not from fear but from the physical impact, the concussion that rattles rib cages and makes teeth ache. At the gate itself, the scene is frantic. Soldiers and townsfolk alike drag beams and stones, stacking improvised barriers where the outer wall already crumbles. You see splinters the size of ship masts jutting from the timbers, fragments of stone scattered like broken teeth. A young soldier, face streaked with soot, calls to you. "Sandbags! To the breach!" His voice is hoarse with smoke and urgency. For a heartbeat, you consider obeying, throwing your lot in with these men who fight to hold the line. But even as you hesitate, another roar splits the sky, and a section of masonry collapses like wet parchment. You step back instinctively, dust choking your lungs. Helping here means standing directly under the hammer of Ottoman artillery. Survival whispers in your ear. Not here, not now. You turn instead toward the inner ramparts, climbing a narrow stair that winds up to the wall walk. From there, perhaps you'll see more. Perhaps you'll understand what you're truly facing. The Theodosian walls stretch before you, a jagged horizon of stone. To the west, across the flat plain, lies an ocean of tents and banners, the Ottoman host. 70,000 men, some say more. Their campfires smoulder like a field of stars. You can pick out the scarlet banners of the Janissaries, the elite infantry who bow only to their sultan. Nearby, the hulking shapes of cannons squat on their frames, iron throats smoking after each thunderous shot. Below you, Constantinople clings to its ancient pride. Priests walk the walls, holding aloft icons of the Virgin, urging defenders to hold fast. Greek and Latin voices mingle in the chaos. Byzantines, Genoese, a scattering of Venetian sailors, all bound by desperation rather than love. A man beside you mutters, "If Rome could see us now." He spits over the wall, though whether at the enemy or fate itself you cannot tell. The cannon fires again. The ball slams into the outer wall with a sound like mountains breaking. Stones fly, men scatter, the city groans. You feel it in your legs, the unnatural shiver of something ancient giving way. You could stay here, lending your arm to the defense, but your eyes are drawn north toward the glittering curve of the Golden Horn. There, a line of ships bobs behind an impossible barrier, the Great Boom Chain. A mile of iron links stretched across the harbour's mouth, daring the Ottoman fleet to break it. Something tells you that if survival lies anywhere, it may lie with the sea. You turn from the walls and make your way toward the harbour. The path winds downward, through alleys choked with dust. Each step carries you closer to the Golden Horn's salt-stung air. And then you see it, the immense iron chain, thicker than a man's waist, stretched from tower to tower across the harbour's entrance. Behind it, the city's defenders float their hopes. Galleys from Genoa, a handful from Venice, and a scattering of Byzantine craft. Their masts sway like forest tops, sails furled, waiting. On the dockside, men argue in a jumble of tongues. Some speak of the chain as invincible, the sea's own wall. Others whisper that Mehmed has a plan, that his ships will not be held back forever. One dock worker, his hands thick with rope burns, eyes you carefully. "You're not from here," he says. Not accusing, not unkind, just certain. You open your mouth to answer, but he shrugs. Doesn't matter. When the chain falls, none of us will be. It's the first time anyone has marked you as an outsider, and in his tone there is no hostility, only the recognition that some men may have a way out when the rest do not. The chain creaks in the tide. Beyond it, Ottoman ships bristle. For now they cannot pass. For now the sea is yours. But rumours ripple through the dockside like oil on water. Mehmed is building roads, they say, greasing timbers to haul ships over land. Madness, surely, but so were cannons, until now. A sailor hurries past you toward the Blaconnet Palace, where the emperor holds counsel. You follow, drawn by curiosity, or perhaps by the faint hope that men in high places still hold answers. The Blaconnet Palace rises at the city's northwest edge, elegant but weary, its marble scarred by years of neglect. Once the pride of emperors, it now hosts war councils rather than banquets. Inside, corridors echo with raised voices. Greek nobles in heavy cloaks argue with Genoese captains whose hands still smell of tar and rope. You edge closer, keeping to the shadows. One councillor slams his fist on the table. "The Venetians will not send more aid," he snaps. "Their senate fears their own harbours will be next." Another retorts, "Then Genoa must bear the cost." The name catches at you. Venetians. You feel it like a tug in the chest, though you keep your face carefully blank. Here, identity is currency, and yours could be dangerous if spent too openly. At the head of the table sits Constantine XI, last of the Paleologoi emperors. His face is pale, his beard streaked with grey. He listens more than he speaks, but when he does, his voice cuts through the bickering like a blade. "We stand together," he says, "or we do not stand at all." His words silence the room, but only for a moment. Then the arguments resume, about grain, about gunpowder, about which wall will fall first. You step back, heart heavy. There will be no miracle from this palace. Only men delaying the inevitable with words. You slip away into the night, heading toward the city's great marketplace, the Forum of Theodosius, where the true mood of Constantinople waits among its people. You leave the palace with the feeling of having slipped out of a room where men are trying to hold back the sea with a tablecloth. The corridors empty behind you. The city rushes in ahead. Wind from the Golden Horn carries the smell of pitch, tar, and the faint iron of cannon smoke. Your legs move before your mind catches up, down through crooked lanes toward the Meze, the great spine road that once paraded emperors and elephants. Today it parades refugees and silence where laughter used to be. At the Forum of Theodosius, the statues still pretend the world will last forever. Marble emperors gaze serenely over a marketplace that has forgotten how to be a market. Stalls that once bulged with fruit and fish now display sacks of grain guarded like jewels. Prices change by the hour. A mother clutches a boy in a too big tunic, promising him bread she does not have. On the steps of a basilica, a monk preaches repentance with the fever of a man who believes an earthquake would be a reasonable improvement. You edge along the colonnade, keeping to shade. A thick-shouldered trader with sun-lashed eyes watches you approach. "Looking for flour?" he asks. The way he clips his words tells you he's not from Constantinople either. When you answer, his face tilts, curious. "Ah, Veneto." It's barely more than a murmur, almost kind. "I thought I heard it." "Don't worry, no one here is counting accents, only coins." He names a price that would make even a bishop swear. You haggle as if your pride can fill your stomach. In the end, you exchange a little silver for a little food and a little information. They say Mehmed's preparing something in Galata, he says, lowering his voice. Wood, grease, men at the ropes, madness or genius. I suppose we'll find out. Madness or genius is the riddle of your day. You tuck the bread into your satchel and look south along the street where the roofs lean together like conspirators. The chant of a procession rises there, steady as a drum. Lord, have mercy. The sound threads through the square like a cord that might hold your mind together, if not the city. You follow it. The crowds thicken near the Hagia Sophia, and the city seems to gather its soul for inspection. Columns the size of trees hold up a sky of mosaic. The saints and angels shine as if someone polished holiness overnight. Priests in embroidered stoles move among the people, blessing, scolding, encouraging, listening. The nave breathes like a living chest. If stone could pray, this is what it would sound like. You find a space along the north aisle. A woman touches the hem of an icon with the tenderness of someone waking a sleeping child. A dishevelled soldier kneels alone, eyes fixed on a candle he does not dare to blow out. Arguments that divided the city only months ago about rights and union and which hand should bless which seem suddenly ridiculous in the face of iron balls that weigh more than horses. A Latin friar murmurs with a Greek deacon. They cross themselves in different patterns, then in the same one. I don't blame you for closing your eyes. Even a historian can. When you open them, the floor shivers. It's subtle at first, the way a bed announces someone sits beside you. Then the shiver becomes a shove. Dust trembles from the chandeliers. The candles flutter. Outside, the boom rolls away like a giant blowing out his cheeks. Mothers pull children closer. Somewhere a baby begins to cry, but the chant does not stop. You are not a soldier. You are not a priest. Your worth will not be measured in how many stones you lift or souls you save. Your worth tonight is in your attention, what you choose to see, where you choose to stand, and when you choose to move. You don't need to be told that too much stillness becomes a kind of surrender. You light a taper, leave it for someone who needs its small fire, and slip back onto the street. Past the Augusteon, the talk runs faster than feet. Did you hear? 2 of our ships broke the Ottoman blockade. Even 3, a miracle. Men in leather caps tell the story with hands as much as mouths. Imperial and Genoese transports, sails straining, rams cutting foam, slipping into the Horn under a rain of arrows and jeers. Ottoman galleys swarmed, but the wind for once took the Christian side. The chain lifted, the ships slid under. Pandemonium on both shores, triumph inside the harbour, and humiliation outside it. Hope is a dangerous spice. A pinch lifts your blood. A fistful rots your gut. You take yours sparingly and head for the water to taste what remains of it. On the quay they argue about dates and sizes and captains, about whether the galleys brought wheat or powder or ghosts. A grey-bearded sailor wrings tar from a rag into a bucket and laughs until he coughs. Mehmed's admiral lost his dinner and his dignity in one afternoon, he says. The Sultan will need a miracle to wash that out. The miracle, when it comes, is not the kind anyone in the city prayed for. 2 days later, whispers become screams and screams become a spectacle. You follow the tide of bodies uphill toward the ridge opposite Galata, to a place where you can look down over the Golden Horn and the Pera shoreline in one sweep. What you see is ridiculous at first. A theatre troupe rehearsing a farce with props too big for the stage. Men are greasing timbers. Ropes coil like pythons. Beneath the ropes, sleds. Upon the sleds, ships. They haul them from the Bosphorus up the gentle slope behind Galata, under banners that shouldn't be so calm in a day like this. Red-painted hulls grind forward, buoyed by logs that roll in waves under them. Water made of wood, oxen strain, men shout, drums throb, the timber road shines with oil. The Genoese of Pera pretend not to see or see without letting their faces move. Diplomacy is a useful word for an impossible posture. You watch one galley reach the crest and begin its unlikely descent toward the inner shore of the Golden Horn. The prow hangs a heartbeat too long, then tips, slow, inevitable, like a verdict, and then slides. Cheers split the air from the Ottoman lines. If contempt could sink ships, the Horn would boil. But contempt alone is no weapon. All afternoon and into the wrecked evening, the procession continues. Hulls scraping, ropes creaking, drums timing a new kind of bell. Lanterns prick the dark, and the city watches a miracle of logistics that feels like the opposite of prayer. By morning, Ottoman masts forest the inner harbour. The chain still gleams across the mouth, but now it guards nothing that matters. Genius, someone spits beside you, or blasphemy. The line is blurry in siege time. The defenders answer as best they can. Fire ships, chained together, shoved out into the water like self-immolations given rudder and hope. For a few brilliant minutes, flames gallop across black water, reflected in 1,000 quivering panes where houses look down into the harbour. Then Ottoman grapnels bite, oars churn, sailors leap, fire becomes steam, steam becomes smoke, smoke becomes laughter drifting across the Horn. You don't stay to listen. Survival prefers action over humiliation. You follow the slope downward toward the southern shore, where the harbour of Eleutherios, the old port that the locals call Kontoskalion, breathes in a narrower basin, crowded with fishing boats and worry. If escape one day becomes less a dream and more a deadline, it will be from here or nowhere. At the piers, a knot of men bars the way with halberds. Their armour has known better days, their eyes know only this one. No passage, their leader says. No one boards without writ or work. Work, you ask? He juts his chin toward the water. Ottoman-like craft have nosed in close, probing, measuring, teasing like cats who've spotted where the mice run. We need hands to keep them honest. You look at your hands. They tremble only a little. You spend the next hour hauling rope, pushing a boat along the quay, taking shouted orders from a deck voice used to being obeyed. At one point a skiff darts close. Archers ready. Someone's father who didn't plan to be a soldier today looses, misses by a yard, curses the wind and tries again. This time the arrow finds wood, not flesh. It's enough. The skiff shears off. The dock cheers with the ragged unity of the newly terrified. When the press eases, a man with a scar that divides his eyebrow like a fork's tine claps your shoulder. You've got a steadier grip than most shopkeepers, he says. His Greek wears a Genoese coat. He leans in, inspecting you the way a jeweller inspects a coin. Venice? It's not quite a question. You allow yourself the smallest nod, the kind that could be mistaken for a twitch if someone unfriendly is watching. Thought so, he says amused. All right, amico, he adds in a quick, friendly Italian that tastes like brine and home. If the moment comes, find me. I know a captain who prefers men who can take orders and keep their accents quiet. That's enough for now. You don't want to become memorable to anyone, not even a man with a helpful scar. You thank him, he waves it off. Your name remains unasked and unoffered. The days sharpen. Each is the same knife and a different cut. You learn the city's new weather. Mornings of dust, afternoons of splinters, evenings of prayer and rumours. The Theodosian walls still hold, though they groan under punishment that would have made earlier centuries cross themselves. In the sectors near the gate of St. Romanus, the great bombards, enormous bronze mouths cast by a Hungarian whom everyone calls Orban as if that name explains why metal obeys him, speak in a slow, merciless rhythm. Rebuilding becomes a religion. Stones hauled, earth rammed, timber braced, all to erase the day's damage before tomorrow's lesson. Men joke that the walls are training to be sand dunes. Sometimes at night, you hear the ground talking. Literally. It's not madness, though. It's miners, Ottoman sappers chewing through the earth toward the foundations, while Byzantine counterminers listen with bowls pressed to the dirt, then dig to meet them with smoke and steel. The city has learned to fight underground as well as on. You fall asleep imagining tunnels beneath your bed like an ant farm, enemy and friend crossing in darkness, both praying to be the first nose into someone else's lamplight. In the Forum, grain runs thinner than hope. In the Hagia Sophia, the candles do not. Once a procession passes your alley, light bobbing on faces, voices braided together, psalms in Greek, responses in Latin, the occasional hushed sob in a language that might be Armenian, or just grief. You don't join, not because you've lost belief, but because your faith has become a kind of arithmetic. If you move here, you can be there before noon. If you are there before noon, you can deliver a message, or carry a beam, or find a rumour before it rots. You build your days as if they were a wall, one small stone at a time, knowing it may not matter, and refusing to act as if that makes it unworthy work. On a moonless night, a storm tries to rise and fails. The air feels scraped clean for no good reason. The next morning, the talk lips to a new tune. An eclipse last night, an omen, say the ones who keep score for heaven. You file it with the rest of the city's weather and go on. By late May, the city's heart beats in countdown. The emperor moves among his men with the tired dignity of a word carved too deeply to wear down. Giovanni Giustiniani, a Genoese captain with muscles like cordage and a professional's eye for where to stand, has become the spine of the defense at the land walls. Some swear they would follow him into hell, others mutter that he hasn't charged them enough to. Both groups are probably telling the truth in their own ways. On the evening of May 28th, the noise thins to a kind of breath. Even the cannons seem to understand that a threshold has been reached. The Hagia Sophia fills beyond any sane capacity. The approaches choke with those who cannot fit. Men who argued doctrine yesterday now clasp hands. Women who swore never to forgive him for this, or her for that, lean their foreheads together as if the right angle might unlock grace. The emperor and his retinue attend a service that will leave the chroniclers arguing about its details for centuries. What matters to you is the human geometry, shoulders touching shoulders, that would not have stooped together on any other night. You stand near the door because you have practiced being a person who can leave quickly without looking like a coward. That is not dishonor. It is the awareness that you are a thread in a tapestry that only stays whole if not all of it is cut in the same place. When the last Amen drifts into the vaults, it does not return. It goes forward. You sleep in your clothes. Everyone does. Even the ones who pretend they don't do. The final assault begins before dawn, which is only fair. Dawn has been attacking the city since April. Now it returns the courtesy. You are roused first by the silence between beats, then by the roar that swallows it. The horns, the drums, the layered waves of men, first assaps, then besiegers who've learned how to die without making it look like surrender, then janissaries with their discipline like a blade you can't see until you're bleeding. Smoke lies along the Theodosian walls like a second rampart. You can't see the defenders at the first rush. You hear them. The crack of crossbows, the hiss of long arrows, the thud of stones rolled down, the shouted prayers that sound like curses, and curses that sound like prayers. Ladders go up, as if a forest decided to imitate hands. Ladders come down, carrying the same truth in different directions. You move when the city moves, first toward the Mesa, where runners bring word like blood brings oxygen, then toward the breaches that have become the day's punctuation. Near the gate of St. Romanus, the fight seesaws in a rhythm that dissolves clocks. Once, the Ottoman banner wavers atop a mound of fallen masonry. Once, a Byzantine standard replaces it. History later will argue over which of those was more real. In your mind, they seem equally so and equally fragile. At a crucial moment, one of those that is only obvious later, Giustiniani is wounded. No one agrees on which weapon found him or which artery. Everyone agrees on the result, though. He leaves the wall, carried or half-walking, depending on whose pride tells the story. On the ramparts, absence bites like a winter wind. Men look backward, see a hole where confidence used to be, and begin to fight as if gravity were tilting against them. Somewhere, perhaps by a postern, or at a breach that changed shape when no one was looking, a small door fails to be guarded by the right man at the right breath. Later, the word Kirko Porter will carry the blame like a scapegoat. Earlier, it was probably just a gate and a mistake. What matters is that the city's inside and its outside finally touch in steel rather than stone. The janissaries flow through the new space with the calm of a liquid that knows which direction is downhill. The street takes fire, not the bright, cinematic blaze of a story told to keep children awake, but the dull, persistent burn of timbers that decide not to outlive their usefulness. Shops cough smoke, cloth scrabbles into flame with a sound like unhappy paper. Somewhere a cart overturns and spills onions that roll like moons under boots and hooves. You are not a hero. You are busy not dying. You keep to walls, keep to shadows, keep your eyes high enough to see where not to look. You pass a courtyard where two neighbors argue with the bitter politeness of men who have disliked one another for 20 years and will now die on the same staircase. You pass a priest who has put down his cross and picked up a spear and looks surprised to find the difference so small. At the edge of the forum, you make your first choice that feels like a coin toss against a god you hope is bad at catching. Left is longer and safer, a path skirting the sea walls, hugging the marble where it meets the waves, around and around until the harbour of Eleutherios finds you like a patient friend. Right is shorter and crueler. Through the market, already a storm of falling awnings, dead geese, overturned barrels, and men who would like to make your straps their straps. You choose the market because the day has become the kind of sentence where commas are more dangerous than dashes. You run. If you've never dodged an amphora rolling at your knees while someone tries to reacquaint your ribs with a spear point, I can't recommend the experience. You slip on oil. You regain your feet. A hand snatches at your satchel. You let the satchel go and keep the hand from taking you with it. A cock that escaped the butcher by accident flaps into your face and explodes back into the world as a feathered reminder that God enjoys comedy. You laugh briefly because the alternative is not laughter, and you aren't ready for that. A side alley opens with the sudden generosity of a miracle. You take it, trusting that narrowness favors the quick. It favors also the one man squatting there with a knife, who looks like he's been waiting all morning for someone exactly your shape and size. He lunges and discovers you are not a wall. You give him your shoulder at speed, and he gives you a wheeze that sounds like mother. Both of you are still alive. Only one of you keeps moving. Ahead, the smell changes. Pitch, fish, salt, and the particular tang of fear that knows which way the shore lies. You burst into the Contuscalion basin where chaos has agreed to hold its meeting. Boatmen shout names, men answer with other names that are not theirs. Coins change hands in denominations that would embarrass a robber. Soldiers have abandoned the pretense of being rare. They stand everywhere, almost as if they were grown from coils of rope. Among them, you spot the scarred Genoese from days ago. He sees you at the same instant and waves, a short, practical movement that wastes no syllables. Here, he says, as if pointing out the obvious. This one. And he nods at a round-bellied transport with a jaw like a stubborn mule and oars that look as if they've been promising to break for 30 years and have inexplicably kept their promise not to. Captain owes me a favor I can collect only once. Better to spend it on someone who can move when told. You open your mouth to invent gratitude that doesn't sound like a confession. You don't get to use any of the words. Across the basin, a knot of men jostles. A spear tilts. Someone fires too high and hits a pennant that comes down like a dead bird, and the world decides the meeting has run long enough. The dock heaves. A rope comes free with a noise like a giant's ankle cracking. People surge as if the tide has decided to become bipedal. Now, the scarred man says. He doesn't wait to see if you've understood now in your language. He grips your elbow like a father in a crowd, and pushes through a humanity that has set aside the idea of personal space until Advent. Once you're at the edge, he doesn't aim for the gangplank, which would be logical and fatal. He aims for the lower rail and the space between two crates. Up, he says, and then he shows you how, swinging himself over the gap with a professional contempt for falling. You follow. Your feet find wood. Your hands remember that rope burns are better than blade wounds. Someone swears in a dialect that sounds like the Black Sea smashing plates. The boat rolls your stomach and the city sky together. The captain does not ask your name, your parish, or your favorite color. Can you pull? He asks. You nod. He points to an oar with a splinter raised along its length like a warning. Then pull. So you do. The first stroke feels like arguing with a mountain, the second like persuading one, the third like begging politely. After 10, the boat believes you are serious. After 20, your back believes the boat is a liar. The water claws at the hull, the oar locks groan. The shouting on the pier slides a little farther inland with every pull. Someone on shore yells that the city is fallen, as if anyone near water wouldn't know a city is falling by the way the air tastes. Someone else yells that the emperor lives and fights in the streets. A third that he died like a soldier with his name on his lips, which is the same as saying he lived like one. Truth has been busy all morning. It will send you its invoice later. Over your shoulder. No, don't look too long. You catch a glimpse of the Hagia Sophia shouldering against the smoke like a tall man in a low doorway. Above it, banners meet and cross and confuse, and a shape like a river in the sky flows toward its doors. You know without needing to be told what happens when a city loses and a conqueror keeps his ancient bargain with his god. 3 days of sack, no more, no less, unless he changes his mind. Doors break. Plate changes hands as if it had always wanted to. People who made their lives in silk find out quickly how rope tastes. You pull anyway. After all, what else is there? The captain shouts. The boat noses into the outer wash. The oars bite cleaner here. The water loses its littered cough and learns again to breathe like a sea. An archer at the bow loses in a methodical, almost bored rhythm at shapes that might be skiffs and might be tricks of smoke. Either way, the arrows keep lies honest. They always do. A gust finds you. The kind sailors bless in 6 languages, and the sail that had looked like a widow's apron fills with a respectable sigh. Your hands don't stop working. Nothing sacred forbids both muscle and wind from saving you at once. Only when the oar-master grunts and jerks his chin do you dare to look back properly. From this angle, Constantinople is less a city than a lesson about the weight of time and how even time can be dragged like a chain. The boom across the Golden Horn still arcs like a thought someone once finished. Inside it, masts stand like a forest that decided not to migrate. Outside, the ships overlanded into the Horn Bob where they did not belong. Proof that geography has always been negotiable if you bring enough men and grease. The smoke veils the land walls, but you sense their line the way you sense bones under skin. Somewhere along that ridge, Constantine the story ended in the only place it could, among his people, in steel. You do not flatter yourself that you have seen the last emperor die. You tell yourself you have seen how a city chooses a witness, and you happen to be the wrong distance from the right event. A historian's humility can be a kindness to his stomach. The boat edges past a headland of the Marmara, aiming for open water where the math changes. The cries from shore blur into one another until they are more weather than language. A gull skates the wind beside you with the unserious interest of a creature that will be dining well on fish, whether flags change or not. Somewhere below your tired feet, the city continues to break and take stock. It is not only gold and chalices and fabrics that change masters today. It is also chores and corners and recipes, and the way doorways smell at noon, and where cats will sun themselves, and how voices rise when sellers weigh fruit. You understand there are kinds of conquest no chronicler bothers to set down because they are harder to illustrate with spears. You promise yourself to remember them anyway. The oar-master calls a rest. His version of rest is mean and short. You fold over your knees and discover you still contain lungs. The scarred Genoese drops beside you, panting like a dog that has outrun a stupid idea. He jerks his thumb toward the dwindling skyline. "If you want poetry," he says between breaths, "best write it before the salt dries." You manage a noise that might be a laugh and might be a sob in disguise. He doesn't ask which. Good men rarely do at sea. The captain swings the bow a point, then another, and what had been a straight line out becomes a clever line along. Sometimes the shortest path is the one that gives predators the least chance to guess. The wind holds, bless its practical soul, and the oars lift and dip like a prayer that you never learned all the words to, but can hum just fine. By late afternoon the water darkens to the blue that belongs to deeper things. The shore is a book closing slowly. Your arms have learned a new alphabet called ache. The men settle into a silence that is not peace, but a treaty between exhaustion and the need to stay alive long enough to enjoy being exhausted. Only when the captain orders the sail trimmed and the oars shipped do you allow the thought its full, terrible shape. You are leaving. Not the way one leaves a house to fetch water. The way one leaves a century and does not return for another. You turn once more. The city of Constantine, the Christian Rome, the hinge between worlds, the pearl so many fingers tried to pry loose, has finally been pocketed by a boy sultan who had the nerve to believe bronze could unteach stone. You feel the sensation men call history when they don't want to admit it is grief. Not only for the dead, not only for the taken, but for the work of hands and days that will not go on in the same patterns. You think of the number people in markets like to recite, 75,000 souls within those walls. Give or take the stubborn and the unborn. How many find the sea today? Not many. Perhaps 5,000 will claim the title of survivor. And of those, more than a few will be merchants from Venice who learned long ago that a man should always know where the ships are. Someone like yourself. Night leans in. Stars offer themselves like small, inadequate coins. The captain orders the lantern hooded. The boat becomes a shadow that happens to move. You tuck your hands under your arms, and for the first time in weeks the trembling that visits them is not from cannon or hunger, but from the body's sudden realization that it is no longer required to be made of iron every minute. I promised you I'd walk with you, and I have. All the way to the moment where choices finally turn into consequence. You chose streets over sanctuaries when it mattered, speed over pride when it counted, a rope over a prayer when the two were not actually enemies. You chose to keep moving, which is the oldest technology for survival ever invented. So as for our initial question, will you survive the fall of Constantinople? Look down. Your boots are dry. Look up. The sky has not fallen on your head. Listen. The shouts behind you are smaller than the waves ahead. Survival is rarely glorious. It is often a sequence of unhandsome decisions made with clarity. You made them. The boat rides a swell that comes from no visible wind, a long, slow breath from a sea deciding it will allow you to pass. Somewhere between wake and horizon lies your next life, a lagoon city whose saints keep their lion on a leash, and whose merchants learned centuries ago how to turn danger into a ledger entry. When you reach it, you will smell salt and silk and oven doors that open onto morning. You will be another face among men who count time by tides and profit by risks. You will sleep, finally, not as a man who has outrun the world, but as one who has discovered he can be small and still whole. And Constantinople, or Stambul, as the city will be called now by mouths that make Turkish sounds beautifully, that city will rise tomorrow to the thunder of a different language. Children will learn new games, markets will learn new prices, builders will learn new orders. One day, perhaps sooner than can be forgiven, the great church where you lit a taper will become a mosque. A muezzin will climb where a deacon once stood and call a prayer you can't translate and don't need to. God has always understood being addressed in more than one voice. Remember this. Your story didn't end at a gate or in a square or under a banner. It ends with a wake line like a silver seam and a ship that knows its work. You didn't defeat an empire, you outlived a moment. That's enough. For tonight, sleep well, you truly deserve it.